Oh, amazing. And how long would you have to do this for?
It takes about 3 to 4 hours to produce enough flour to make bread for a family of 12.
So after you've done the 3 or 4 hours grinding, you can relax a bit by kneading the dough. And when you've done that, you'd form it into little patties, put it on the fire, and when they were cooked, you'd have enough bread for the family. But your whole life wasn't just limited to what happened in the house. Sometimes civic duty called. The Dark Ages were turbulent times. By 850, England had formed into 3 warring kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia and Wessex. They fought each other and outsiders. On top of his other jobs, the churl had to do national service. All those axes, swords and armour required iron. And that created another terrible job: the bog iron hunter. What are we after, Jerry?
What we're looking for, Tony, is stuff called bog ore. It's the iron ore that was used certainly in the Saxon period.
In Saxon times, bogs were the main source of iron ore for smelting. The wetlands were where the ore had developed across millions of years. It then just had to be found. Who would the guys have been who would have been doing this?
Probably at the very bottom, I think. I mean, it's a mucky, hard, endless job, because they would probably be needing, possibly when they were doing a lot of iron smelting, 30 or 40 kilos a day.
It's all right for us because we've got wet weather gear on, but they wouldn't have had anything.
Oh, it's a thankless task, because obviously the iron smelter was dependent on getting his iron ore.
It's a bit like a needle in a haystack, isn't it?
It is. I mean, they probably know a good idea where it is, but not exactly where it is. And because they'll be utilising it year in, year out, they're always looking for new sources, so they'll be out there all the time looking for it and probing for it.
I found something that's going clonk a bit.
Just get that out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that we're looking for.
You say sort of thing. Is it it?
It is. I mean, it doesn't look like anything special, but that is bog ore.
How much metal do you reckon there is in there?
Well, I think if we were going to do a smelt tomorrow, we'd probably need another 10 or 15 of these, because it only weighs perhaps 2 or 3 kilograms, and they're just scattered off around the bogs.
It's a frustrating job, isn't it?
It is. It is.
This was a back-breaking and thankless job. Out in all weathers in places like this. 4 or 5 more lumps like the one we got, and I'd have enough for an axe. Being a bog iron hunter might well have been miserable, but they were lucky compared to those who had to use the finished article. In the Dark Ages, very few jobs paid money. Like the churl, most people just worked to live. But there were some specialised jobs. Someone had to work metal. Not everyone could do this. But to get metal hot enough to work with required material capable of giving off great heat. Charcoal. Nowadays, all our charcoal's mass-produced. It's just something in a big sack that you heave into the back of the car. But in Saxon times, it was very different. Everybody needed charcoal virtually all of the time, and it all had to be made. And that was a long, hard, and very difficult job. Every little town and village would have had its own charcoal maker. They set themselves up in the forest, they cleared a space and collected wood. Lots of it. 3 tons or so. They then built it up into a sort of igloo shape, carefully placing the wood so it didn't collapse. This basically ended up as a sort of giant oven to slowly bake the wood. They lit a fire inside, which would have taken about 5 hours or so to catch.
Right, well, it looks like it's the moment of truth.
They had to be careful to make sure it just smouldered and didn't really burn as such. If it burnt too strongly, then the whole lot would have gone up. Maybe also bits of the forest too. But what made this a really horrible job was the process once it was lit. What you had to do was just sit and watch it for up to 100 hours solid.
You sit for many an hour watching a charcoal kiln, day and night. And the tendency is to get a little bit bored and to nod off. And it is very frightening to wake up and find a big hole in your kiln with flames leaping 12, 15 feet in the sky. So the charcoal burners developed a one-legged stool so that if they did nod off, they literally nodded off the stool. Kept them awake.
Right, let's leave them to it then. We'll pop back in a few days or so. There's one other skilled craftsman who deserves a mention on any list of the worst jobs in history. A man who risked his limbs for his work. A man who lived constantly in fear, always afraid of being denounced for cheating. For my next worst job, welcome to the world of the coin stamper. The Saxons produced the first penny in 765. At that time, every local area had to have its own mint. Each one had 5 or 6 people like this, cutting and hammering away and making coins. It was really like early piecework. But these guys didn't get paid, they got bed and board, yet they were surrounded by all this money all the time, and none of it was theirs. Coins had to be shaped. You might think that the poor old stamper would be tempted to snip off the odd bit of silver. If he was caught, the punishments were severe. Shaving a bit off the coins was seen as defacing the king's head, a very serious offence. The penalty was castration. And if a whole coin went missing, then this guy's boss had his hand cut off and nailed to the door as a deterrent. So the pressure was really applied hard. Long, cold days in the mint, and no chance of a mistake. Back out in the woods, Dave has been awake for 48 hours solid. But it's not over yet. For the charcoal burner, time is the enemy. There's still a danger that the whole lot goes up in smoke. And after another 24 hours, this is it, the big moment. After a week of hard work and sitting around staying awake, the Saxon charcoal makers were left with this much charcoal. And because charcoal was in so much demand in Saxon times, they just had to clear this lot away and start the whole process all over again. The monastery was a key part of Saxon life. Monks led a life of serenity, of reflection and prayer. A bit of singing and a lot of bowing. Compared with the drudgery of outdoor life, this looks pretty cushy. Hang on, that is just the telly. It may have looked like that in medieval times, or at least in our rather romantic vision of medieval times.